Bush Heritage Australia's Monjabup Reserve is in a global biodiversity hotspot. We know that this southwest corner of Australia, the 5% of Australia that's in this part of the continent, has been until recently at least Australia's only global biodiversity hotspot, and that's because the southwest has such an extraordinarily high proportion of Australia's total flora. By restoring this little 400 hectares connectivity gap in the middle, we're actually establishing now a fragment that's going to be over 8,000 hectares in size and a continuous piece of habitat. So we know there's a whole range of fauna will benefit from that. We're standing on the north end of our Monjabup North Reserve, which is one of several properties Bush Heritage Australia is involved in here on the Gondwana Link project. We've bought this property, as the others that we have between Stirling Range and Fitzgerald River National Parks, to contribute to really re-establishing connectivity between those two national parks. So we've got a gap of about 70 kilometres between the national parks. Bit of bush in the middle here. We're just on the south end here of Karakarup Nature Reserve, administered by the Department of Parks and Wildlife, and our own Monjabup Reserve to the south. So connectivity conservation is really born out of the recognition that just managing the fragments, the islands of habitat we have left, isn't really going to do the job for us in terms of sustaining biodiversity into the future, and we've really got to set about working at a larger scale. And when we look across the landscape like the one behind us here, it looks largely, what I'd call homogeneous. It looks pretty much of a muchness, all the same sort of thing. Sitting under this landscape, we've got an extraordinarily diverse and quite fine-scale mosaic of soil types, and it's really the underlying soil type that determines what sort of vegetation develops on it. So Bush Heritage Australia and Threshold Environmental Limited have developed a really close working relationship on this project. So rather than simply mixing up a mix of the sort of species we might expect to find here and plastering it wholesale across the landscape, we're quite specifically targeting particular mixes of seeds and species to particular soil types. So we've got fauna monitoring sites. We know what's on this landscape at the moment. We've installed on the first 100 hectares, we've got 3 fauna monitoring sites, and as the years go by, we'll be hopefully monitoring the return of a whole range of fauna to our recreated landscape. So we're using large agricultural equipment to do direct seeding, which is, and I think of it much as painting a canvas. So the broad brush strokes that we're putting back on the landscape is that work with the multi-row agricultural direct seeder. We're getting much closer to replicating what I would call, a natural, or at least a naturalised system in the landscape. So I think we've made enormous advances in a whole range of areas over the last few years, and particularly over the decade that Bush Heritage Australia and its partners have been working here in the Fitzsterling, in just getting smarter and smarter in the way we do our business in terms of achieving efficiencies and economies of scale, but also in constantly working to that objective of recreating a natural landscape with all of the habitat values for fauna that we would want to see re-established in this landscape. Bush Heritage Australia has employed an ecologist on this Gondwana Link project for almost a decade now, so I'm really lucky to work every day alongside essentially a full-time ecologist to inform our work. And the great thing about doing this work is it's so rewarding, because the ecological outcomes monitoring is proving that restoring this open country is actually having the benefits that we've been hoping it would have for a whole range of wildlife. These restored ecosystems are absolutely pumping. They're producing phenomenal amount of biomass, they're producing pollen and nectar, and so we think about that in terms of species for whom nectar is a key part of their diet, like the honey possum, and they love this stuff. They love this young, really productive system. So it's really, really encouraging that we're seeing those results coming in so early in the piece. Bush Heritage's work here is largely about making sure that we don't get to that critical environmental tipping point where once we've gone over that or beyond that, we start getting species disappearing out of the landscape. Bush Heritage Australia is just one of many partners and collaborators on this Gondwana Link project. Sitting really, I suppose, as an umbrella over the top of the whole Gondwana Link project, we've got Gondwana Link Limited. On the project itself, we work quite closely with Greening Australia, Western Australia. We work with the Fitzgerald Biosphere Group, which is a small local community-based group working out of Jerramunga. That's largely has a farmer base. We've got a great sort of international melting pot of people who've really come here recognising the importance of this part of Australia as global biodiversity hotspot, and also the Gondwana Link project as one of the cutting-edge connectivity conservation projects really anywhere on the planet at the moment.